Hi there, my name is Kay Moon and I'm a Western astrologer and twin flame channel, and this is a video about the Scorpio New Moon taking place on Friday, November 1st at 8:46 a.m. if you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States. If not, please check a time zone converter for your local time. Thank you so much for joining me for another awesome lunar update. Love being able to do this with everyone. A couple of quick announcements. Number one, I'll be in the comments for the first hour after these videos drop and in the live chat once they air. So if you have a question or a comment you'd like me to make sure that I see, or you want to chat, be sure to join me while these are live so that we can have some interaction. Join me in the chat and say hi. Number two, while we are still in the wake of the very relationship focused eclipses that we just had in September, beginning of October, the relationship readings are available for any guidance you may need in your relationships. They are 30 and 60-minute, and those are for folks who want to come solo, have me look at their chart and another person's chart for compatibility or understanding. But if you and a partner would like to come, the 90-minute is the one you want to book. Number three, stay tuned until the end, and we'll do what I call first look, and I'll give you my first impression of how this new moon in Scorpio is going to progress into the next lunation. And we will talk about just kind of what things we should expect. Number four, if you are not on my private list, I strongly recommend it, especially if you are part of the Twin Flame and Divine Counterpart Collective. I have a special offering coming for this group in particular in November that will not be available for the YouTube community until 2025. So if you felt like you could use some support, clarity, and guidance to find your way in your connection, because everyone's connection is taking a very unique path as we close out the 2022 and 23 union window, then definitely get on the list, especially if you have found US conversion rates from your currency make it difficult to participate or get readings with me, as this is going to be the most affordable offering I've provided to date. And the price will be for private listers only on this side of 2025. Lastly, happy birthday, Scorpio. This is your annual Lunar New Year, giving you the opportunity for a fresh emotional start and a new beginning. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out for all of us collectively and for you. Here is our new moon in Scorpio, right there at that 9th degree. Scorpio, we see a trine to Saturn in Pisces, as well as a sextile to Pholus in Capricorn. Very minimal aspects from other planetary energies here. I have looked and relooked and studied and restudied. This is very significant that this new moon is coming in with such minimal aspects, because it's also, if we look at the other energies that will be unfolding at this lunation, the other energies are very active. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Juno, Jupiter. They're having a lot of conversations at this lunation that are very significant. But the new moon itself is not having a lot of conversations. And this is going to render this new moon a container of establishment for the choices we make and when we use the other energies. And these other energies are very contradictory. Some of them are leaning heavily into shadow, others of them are leaning heavily into light. And so this opens up a choice point in our collective timelines. Okay. So be sure to listen to that section carefully where I talk about the other planetary energies, because there are a lot of seemingly opposite energies playing out at the same time. The energy of the new moon itself is, like I said, one of establishment, groundedness, solidification, and that is going to act as a container for the choices that we make. What we do at this time will establish a pattern, a process, a direction with some momentum that can take roots and actually be a little hard to break or get out of. And so, understanding these other planetary energies that are catalyzing us toward these choice points and how to use them will be an opportunity for mastery for those of us who are conscious. Okay. So, definitely be sure to listen until the end to know what kinds of choices we're all going to be faced with collectively, why we may be experiencing them, and what to be aware of so that it's easier to stay on your highest timeline. Now, with Saturn as the only planetary aspect, and we do see a centaur here that's fullest, but with Saturn as the only planetary aspect here, the it's telling a very interesting story. So, to understand Saturn's influence, we need to understand Saturn's mythology. Originally, Saturn was given dominion over time, the opening and closing of seasons, sequencing of events, and structure, kind of boundaries for things. However, there came a time when his mother, Gaia, needed a little bit of help with her self created lover because her lover was harming her as she was giving birth to their co created children, not children's. And so she called out to her original children, the Titans. She said, "Hey, I need some help here. My lover Uranus is hurting me. He's trying to shove the babies back inside of me as I birth them. And you all know this is what I do. I give birth to things." Saturn was the one to answer and said, "Okay, what do you need me to do, Ma?" Gaia says, "Castrate him." And from there, we get Saturn taking on the additional reputation of being the separator, the harsh teacher, the punisher. But that's only when we look at it from the gaze of Uranus, her lover, the male gaze. When we bring in the female gaze, when we bring in Gaia, what we see is that what she got out of that situation was the opportunity to be herself again, to operate in her divine power again, which was to create. And so, if we can add the female gaze, we can see that Saturn, yes, will operate separation or distancing or correction, but it will do so in service of our capacity to come back to wholeness, to restore that which has been undermining, to restore our true self and our whole self through separation from that which has undermined us. So, with this new moon, we do get a sense of it's time when it comes to responsibility and accountability for any changes we need to make in our lives, in particular when it comes to removing elements that have undermined us. Now, for some, this will be with regard to home in particular, since the moon governs home. There's also a bit of a sense of tenacity and follow through here as well, as Saturn will see a season and a task through to its completion. Further, we see this influence bring in a sense of responsibility and commitment. That castration that Saturn enacted upon Uranus was permanent. Saturn's changes tend to be quite long lasting, especially when it comes to things that do not serve us. So we can use that to our advantage, which I'll talk about in a moment. Now, to be more specific, in places in our lives where we've let ourselves down, where we've fallen off our game in any area of life, this new moon is where we get that inner urge to get back on top of things. So there's a lot of opportunity to clean up, rectify, provide structure to places that we may have been a little lax about previously, both publicly and privately. We're certainly seeing some of this unfold as the United States walks into this election season. There's from both sides, whether you are red or blue state or voting one way or another, there is this external created by these planetary energies sense I cannot be civically disengaged. I need to take responsibility for the direction my country has taken, even if I don't know how to. There is this sense in the air to find a way to be engaged and to commit to the restoration of the vision of the country that you would like to see. This is publicly, and one example publicly, but privately, there are also many examples that many of us are seeing in our individual lives. Next, I will say that this will bring about a correction in our interior and exterior masculine energies. There's a lot of right use of masculine authority and power available with this aspect. Now, with this energy, there can be a rebalancing of our interior masculine structures where we've over relied on our masculinity at the expense of our internal feminine energy, and where we've under relied on our masculine energy, leaving our internal feminine energy exposed to harm or overwork due to a lack of providing protection or structure or boundaries for ourselves. This new moon gives us a sense of where we need to recalibrate a new dynamic between our inner masculine and our inner feminine energies. Now, some will take additionally, here's another interpretation. I mentioned at the full moon in Aries that we recently had that some are going to take the emotional clearing, that there would be an emotional clearing in the matrilineal lines. And if you're new here, welcome. If you missed that, and this is already your vibe, your speed, your style of astrological update, check out the full moon in Aries because it is very much linked to this particular new moon in Scorpio in many ways. There's a carryover of energies. And at the beginning, there's a bit of a channeled message I shared, and this is a continuation of that there was a clearing in the matrilineal lines for many people through that full moon in Aries. Some are going to take that emotional clearing that unfolded with the full moon in Aries and create new boundaries at this new moon in Scorpio with female authority or mother figures in their lives, because Saturn is boundaries and moon is mothers. Others can use this time to forge stronger bonds with men or male authority figures in their lives. And there's a lot of practical support that can come from people in this category if you're open to receiving it. So, men, authority figures, or male authority figures. So, keep that in mind. Now, this new moon, the last message I had about the new moon itself and this conversation with Saturn, this new moon is going to be very sobering and emotionally stabilizing in several ways. It's going to be a bit of a wake up call for many of us in at least one key area of life about something that needs to end or die. That is the scorpionic energy, that alchemical transformation and state change from one configuration into something that is completely different and unrecognizable to the original state. That's the gift and the power of scorpionic energy. And so this new moon will be quite sobering and will provide that kind of wake up call and stability for all of us. And here's 3 ways to expect it. Number 1, it's a great time to get organized, create plans and strategy, and align choices with truth, as the emotions can be more balanced when Saturn is in conversation with the moon, especially through water sign energy. And we see Saturn here is in Pisces. We see moon is in Scorpio, both water signs. This is going to allow us to honor the emotional truth of a circumstance, see it for what it is, but not get swept away by it. We're going to be more able to see the big picture and the steps required to get there with more clarity from a new moon like this. And for those who are already very task oriented, it will be important to not be hard on yourself and remember how far you've come, as this energy may feel like pressure to accomplish more. On the other hand, for those who need more emotional groundedness in order to be task oriented and make decisions and take action, use this time wisely as the fog clears to get on top of things that may have been delayed due to extended emotional processing. Now, the second way in which this is going to be sobering and emotionally stabilizing is that it's going to be very easy to release. Remember, Saturn severs. It's going to be able to release or cut off anything that's not aligned with our highest good. So, this is a great time to cut ties with people, situations, and places or behaviors that have undermined your ability to be whole. And if you're not cutting those ties, you may find that life works out in a way where they are cut for you at this time, thus giving you access to a new beginning and a fresh start without the influence of people, places, things, and habits that may have been compromising to you. Now, I understand because I have been through many significant Saturn transits myself and really studied this, that sometimes the things that get severed during significant moments of a Saturnian transit can feel like, but wait, I wasn't done with that. Why is this getting cut off from me now? Sometimes these severances can unfold because there is a next level of life ready to come in for us that we consciously are either unaware of or have repressed. And so when Saturn does his work on our behalf and these people, places, circumstances, habits get severed and we are unhappy about it, understand that it is indeed for our benefit and elevation because there's a new level of wholeness that's ready to unfold in your life. But the thing that is departing now had to move out of the way so that there would be space for this next level of wholeness that's about to unfold in your life. So keep that in mind. And number three, sobering and emotionally stabilizing. As I mentioned, the third way to expect this is for those who've already been putting in the work. So a lot of you who, you've stayed dealing with your emotions and your spiritual path and making changes in the third dimension, in your finances, in your work, in your housing circumstances, in your career. When it comes to schooling or family, you've been working hard on Saturnian themes such as boundary, structure, order, sequencing, discipline, making sure that things are done on time. If this is you and you've already been putting in the work, this is the kind of new moon where your effort does get rewarded and you could see a promotion or a breakthrough in an area of life where you already know you have checked off many of the boxes of things required for you. So, sobering and stabilizing in the way where it will create an establishment of this higher level for you. For many, a great example is those of you who have pretty much gotten a promotion at work in everything but name, title, rank, and pay only. This is the kind of new moon where if you've been putting in that work, this is where the establishment of the name, the title, the rank, and the pay and the position gets solidified for everyone external to you and for you. Okay. So that's an example of the way that can work, that stabilization factor. Let's talk about, we see here a square to Chariklo, and then we'll talk in a moment about Pholus there. So if there is a square to Chariklo to this new moon, Chariklo's influence brings a touch of divine support and divine intervention if we're willing to ask for it. as Cheroklo represents divine intercession on our behalf. So, whether you work with angels, spirit guides, ancestors, ascended masters of the Holy Spirit, I'm not here to judge your path. As part of the way that you communicate with God, the divine, there is an indication with this placement that they are standing by, looking for you to ask for their aid in whatever you're working on at this time. Now, the square influence indicates some challenges in either receiving the support once you've asked or even asking to begin with. It's also indicative that we may not see what we get as support, as it may be something non traditional or unexpected since she's in the sign of Aquarius. So we will have to be creative in figuring out how to make the things that we get in response to our request work for our highest good. So it's going to be important to have a lot of faith and trust that what is happening is, in fact, exactly what we needed. It is working out in our favor, even if it doesn't look that way on the surface. It's also going to be easy to look at the unexpected and perceive it as a fly in the ointment and not our fairy godmother turning the pumpkin into the carriage a la Cinderella. Definitely keep an open mind and use the question, all right, show me how this can work for my highest good, universe. Show me how this can work to my benefit. Show me how this is for my benefit. To trigger your subconscious mind's capacity to be empowered by whatever shows up. And I want to really highlight here that this is going to be important for those of you who consider yourself way showers as we move into the frenzy of this last week before the United States election, especially those of you who have kind of global concern about the way this election will go. For those of us who operate in the way shower vein, that question, show us how this works out for our highest good, whichever candidate wins, is really going to serve our ability to know what is our next step, both in terms of service, but also privately in our own lives, in terms of managing any changes or severances or completions that show themselves as Saturn aspects this particular new moon. Now let's deal with Pholus, this centaur here in sextile to the new moon in Capricorn. I have to say, this is the most complimentary placement of this centaur this entire year. OMG. I am so very happy to see it. So, Pholus can represent poison or toxicity or just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. In sextile to the new moon, though, it allows us to have an awareness of what's undermining us and an ease when it comes to changing that. And because Pholus is also in the sextile position to Saturn, it's 60 degrees away from Saturn and it's 60 degrees away from this new moon. Angle is going to make it easy for us to shift. It's just a matter of getting started. The momentum and the movement and the emotional sobriety will be there if we're just willing to get started. Now, if you're already hearing something that resonates or illuminates, this is your invitation to hit that like button. And if you're new, welcome. Please subscribe. In general, because this new moon is in Scorpio, this is about establishing a transformation. It's also about establishing power. In neutrality, these are the two things Scorpio represents: transformation and power. Alchemical state change, that's the transformation, the movement from one state to another state, caterpillar to butterfly, and also power. Something can end with this new moon, giving way for something new to begin. What begins and what ends will have long-lasting run with Saturn in trine to this new moon. Now, because both Saturn and the new moon are in water signs, there is an energy of the change coming from a place of deep emotional truth. That's the scorpionic part. And deep spiritual truth. That's the Piscean part. That's the neutral energy. In shadow, however, this reads like could be a shutting down out of fear and fear based establishment of a new order in our lives. That's Scorpio. In shadow, Scorpio really deals heavily in fear. On the other hand, in the light, this reads like a massive self empowerment opportunity to overcome things that have made us afraid, ashamed, or rageful. Those are the three emotional qualities that scorpionic empowerment has to confront in order to pick up the power and own it. Now, there are some more challenging planetary aspects in play that could pull us more towards shadow. There's also very potent planetary aspects that can pull us toward the light at this new moon. So it's going to be up to us which energy we follow, as this new moon offers pathways to act on and solidify our lower self, or act on and solidify our higher self. Do we let our base emotions win? Do we fly off into catastrophe with whatever happens with this election or whatever thing is unfolding at this particular time? Do we awfulize? Do we catastrophize and then react on the festering of those emotions? Or do we lean into the highest of our human spirit and our capacity as way showers, and that God within us to show us how we can work this to our benefit? Where is the light in this? What is the opportunity? What's the growth in this? We can go either way. Now, it's these planetary aspects that I'm about to talk us through that will amplify the offer to choose one or the other pathway. But I want to warn you as you're listening, what I'm about to share are some very contradictory energies, which means there is not a singular influence here, but there is duality here. And it can be both exciting and nerve wracking. Ultimately, it will be empowering for those of us who know how to use this energy to serve our goals. Now, if you've had challenges figuring out how to use the planetary energies to your advantage up to this point, and this has been a very stimulating year, it's been poking, prodding, like pulling us into change. If you have fallen into some pattern of paralysis or throwing your hands up, and I'll just leave it to the divine, when the planetary energies have been very clear, you are the divine. Step into it, make some choices. If you've had challenges knowing where is your path or where is your start point, because there's so much going on, your chart does hold the blueprint. You can book a personal reading with me for this Friday, and we can look at how to use this energy to get unstuck according to your chart, because your path is going to be very unique and quite personal to you. Your natal chart shows what's ahead. Now, we are all going to feel this new moon's energy in one way or another. And if you need some support, like I said, there are readings available this Friday. You can book with me at kmoonastro.com. Link is below this video. And there are some signs in particular that are going to feel the additional aspects that I'm about to detail that are going to be different than the signs that are going to feel the new moon energy most. But let me tell you who's going to feel this new moon energy the most. The signs that are going to experience the sobering, the stabilization, the establishment, and the call to be able to sever something that's just no longer serving. These are going to be Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Rising, Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Rising, Leo, Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising, Cancer, and Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Rising. Okay? But we're all going to feel this in one way or another collectively. Now, there are some other signs. I want to say it's mainly some of the cardinal signs that are going to feel the other energies that I'm talking about. And that's Aries, Libra, Cancer and Capricorn, but I'll get to those in a moment. Let's have a look at the story these other planetary players are telling at this lunation, because this is where the real action is at this new moon. Let's start with Mercury, the next one closest to the sun. Here's Mercury. Mercury governs consciousness, communication, thought processes, governs learning, short distance travels. Now, here's Mercury in very deep, investigative, secretive, power dealing with, thoughtful Scorpio. Mercury is going to be trine Mars here in Cancer, opposite Uranus there in Taurus, trine Neptune in Pisces, and sextile Pluto in Capricorn. Okay. Very potent energies. Now, normally I'd break Mercury down in communication with each of these one at a time. However, as I studied this energy, I do feel like these are all telling a very singular story and working in concert with a very singular overarching message. This configuration is where the insight for growth is going to come from at this new moon. Now, Mercury represents, as I mentioned, mind and communication. And when we change our minds, which is what Pluto and Uranus are asking, change. Pluto wants change through endings. Uranus wants change through evolution. When we change our minds, we can change our lives. And with Mars, which is all about motivation and movement, and Uranus, which is also about divine insight in the mix, and we get evolution and revolution through Uranus and Neptune, which deals with our intuition and imagination. And Pluto, like I mentioned, it's all about endings and rebirth, all in conversation with the planet that governs communication, thinking, rationalization. We are prompted to look at old or existing situations with new eyes. For many of us at this time, we will find that our eyes have been opened to something, both in our individual lives, about ourselves, about our circumstances, but we will also see this revelation unfold collectively. The conclusion of one way of collective thinking, collective perception, and the understanding and the awareness that a new kind of thinking is going to be necessary to move forward. Okay. We're going to be able to see the world at large with new eyes, and this is going to help us navigate to not just new identities for ourselves, but it's also going to help us really start to understand what is the world asking for from us as way showers or light workers or people in service to humanity's highest good. Seeing ourselves differently, as I mentioned, is going to force us to act differently, speak differently, and change our circumstances. And like I mentioned, this is going to be supreme change from the inside out that's accessible for all of us at this new moon. And then fortified by the new moon's aspects to Saturn, and that solidification and establishment of something completely new and different in our lives. Likely the complete ending of one regime, one regimen, one process in our lives, and the installation of something wholly new and different that has the roots to last. Okay. So keep that in mind. And as I mentioned, keep in mind the question, okay, how can this work out to my highest good? What in this is going to serve me? What do my eyes need to be open to be able to stand in empowerment? Okay, very potent questions. Let's work with the next planet in proximity to the sun that wasn't included in conversation with the new moon. Let's talk about Venus. Now, we see Venus in opposition to Jupiter. We see Venus in a square to Saturn here in Pisces. Jupiter is in Gemini. We see a square to Neptune, also in Pisces. We see a trine to Chiron in Aries. Here we go. And we see a sextile to Lilith in Libra. This combination speaks to being forced to change what we value specifically. Venus deals with value. She is sitting in the sign that deals with truth. And so when Venus passes through Sagittarius, we see a real valuing of optimism, faith, hope, truth. These are the things that Sagittarius governs. And so collectively, we've stepped into this period where we have collective valuing around that. Normally, Jupiter and Venus, when they're in conversation, so Jupiter is the opposing planet, in every configuration, the square, the opposition, the trine, the sextile, the conjunction, they just want to have a good time. And in the aspects of tension, such as the opposition in this case, they can get out of hand when it comes to having a good time. They can do things in excess. In the opposition in particular, it's easy to let a good time get out of hand if we're having fun in love or with money. A flirtation can go further than we intended. We can overspend. We can overeat. We can overdrink. We can go on a binge of some form. Be careful for those of you who know you already kind of have that tendency or that established neural pathway to take things further than you need. Be quite careful walking into this new moon and thoughtful about your choices. When we've planned for things like this, like say we're going on a vacation or to a party or on a date, or letting our hair down with intention, this can be a great thing, no problem. But for those for whom this is not intentional, real important to stay mindful, especially because of Neptune's influence. Neptune is the captain of Team No Limits. It does not have an off switch once it gets started. So in all circumstances, please stay safe, have that designated driver, have limits on your credit cards or your spending. Know when enough is enough with that flirty coworker. And if you know you're already a Team No Limit player yourself, the week before and the week after this new moon, it's going to be a great time to steer clear of situations that can get you into trouble so you can stay in the vein of whatever it is you and Saturn are trying to establish for yourself as order and structure for your life at this new moon. If you can make the needed decisions ahead of time about your boundaries and values, in particular, again, Venus is about values, you'll find that Saturn's influence will help. And here's Saturn, the sobering one. You can make the decisions needed ahead of time about your boundaries and values. You'll find that Saturn's influence will help by squaring both Venus and Jupiter. Okay. Saturn's influence is there. But since Neptune is the outer planet, Neptune can be more dominant. And again, Neptune is the captain of Team No Limits. So we'll have to be very intentional about using Saturn's discipline and structure and boundaries in the face of temptation to either let things slide, leave it up to fate, get distracted by either vices or just straight up more fun and pleasurable things to do. I mean, come on, it's been a stressful year. We've all earned it. I get it. It's not that I'm against fun or pleasure. It's that this new moon offers us a chance to rectify situations that have long needed rectification. It also has enough energy with this other influence of Jupiter, Venus, Neptune, all in tension, all doing the most. It has enough energy to distract us from what needs to be done. It has enough energy to have us looking the other way. And so, again, Pay attention to what's happening in the outer world, where distraction is being utilized intentionally to keep you from being focused on the things that you need to be doing. Okay. So be warned, as I mentioned, Saturn's here, wants to create some structure and discipline. Talking to the new moon wants to keep us grounded, speaking to Venus and Jupiter. Contradictory energy. Here's Neptune. You don't need to worry about that. You can put that off another day. Why bother opening that piece of mail? Why don't you just go out with your friends? You've earned it. Contradicting energies. Use it wisely. We see Chiron here also influencing Venus as well. Chiron's going to add an element of healing for those who need it in the arena of money, values, self-worth, or love. Those who are prone to put relationships over responsibilities, be warned, it will feel very easy to get lost in relationship challenges or flights of fancy and let other important things fall to the wayside with the Neptune square to Venus and feel like, oh, I got to figure out my emotions before I can deal with, I don't know, paying your rent on time, whatever your version of ditching responsibility for getting lost in the emotional sauce is. We can do two things at the same time. Okay. This will be a very important new moon to learn how to do both, manage interpersonal dynamics and handle the needs of your life. Whatever we do at this time has roots. For those of you on the other end of the spectrum that tend to let life demands be more important than the key people who keep you afloat, living and breathing and tethered to your beating heart, this is the new moon to also learn how to do both, handle the needs of your life and manage the needs of interpersonal connection as well. You get the idea. Whatever you normally do that may have caused challenges in the past, great new moon to not do that and do the opposite, as patterns, habits, and routines established walking into this new moon's energy have a high potential to get solidified as our new normal. So take advantage of Chiron's influence here to heal any challenges you've had with handling health, mental health, financial health, relationship health, family health, etc. Okay. Now, you could use any support around this. Again, a quick 30-minute personal reading can show you the pathway that's going to be personal for you, especially if you felt like the changes have been confusing or challenging or have had you stuck or like, where do I start even? You can book with me over at kmoonastro.com. Link is below this video. Let's take a look at Mars in Cancer now. Mars here. This is another, going to provide some more contradictory energy. So let's dig into it. Mars is opposite Pluto right here in Capricorn at the 29th degree. It is square Chiron right here, 20th degree of Aries. Very loose square, but there nonetheless. We have a square to Juno at the 29th degree there of Libra. We see a trine to Neptune in Pisces here. And we also see a sextile to Uranus in Taurus. And we see a trine to Mercury there in Scorpio. This is going to be probably the most impactful energy of the new moon, to put it lightly. Mars in neutrality is movement, and it's also action. In light, Mars is motivation and ambition. But in shadow, Mars is aggression, hastiness, and war. Mars can perform in neutrality, shadow, or light, depending on the planets influencing Mars and depending on our own choices. For the conscious, we can always choose the light, regardless of the planetary influences. But for those unconscious, those who are still sleeping, It's easy to fall in shadow because of the planetary influences and emotional reactivity. Let's take this deeper. The tension inherent in Mars's opposition to Pluto, this combo right here, you're going to hear a lot of astrologers talk about this over the coming several months. This is an important one as it colors not just the end of this year, but the totality of the Mars retrograde period through the end of Mars's shadow period next spring. I'm going to be straight with us. Mars and Pluto in conversation can easily bring out the worst in one another, especially in aspects of tension like the square and in this case, the opposition. Pluto in neutrality, simply metamorphosis, the ending of one state, a state of integration, and then a resurrection into a completely different form. In the light, Pluto is empowerment through transformation, it's growth and self determination. But in shadow, Pluto brings forward death, control, manipulation. Emotionally, Pluto can evoke fear, shame, or rage. Acting on these emotions are when empowerment can become disempowerment when one person or group usurps another's power or right to self determination. I'm detailing the shadow here because with Mars, an emotional water sign, Cancer, Mars tends to act before he thinks in this position. Further, we have the perfect recipe for action that's coming not just from an emotional place, but is also hasty or fear driven, given Pluto's influence, coming from aggression or control. And ultimately, this is the foundation for a power struggle. Now, this isn't all bad. During seasons of these configurations, you'll notice if you track back, these are seasons where you personally may have made great strides in your personal life in the world of empowerment, self empowerment, especially because Mars's energy in a retrograde in connection with Pluto demands that we take action of some sort, given how uncomfortable it is to sustain the status quo. It's impossible for things to stay the same. These are seasons of great transformation when Mars is retrograde in communication with Pluto, square, opposition, sextile, trine, conjunction, all of it, seasons of great change. We'll get into specific dates on an upcoming live about the Mars retrograde season so you can track your life and the history of your life and the changes you've made during these seasons historically. But one that comes to mind in recent memory was 2020 when George Floyd was brutally murdered by law enforcement officers who used excessive force. Protests erupted worldwide and cultural change took place that polarized many on the topics of race, power, policing, and police oversight. And here we are again with one of these transformational transits of Mars retrograde in conversation with Pluto. That time in 2020 was Mars retrograde squaring Pluto. This time it's going to be Mars retrograde opposite Pluto. Now, what we do with this energy is going to be up to us, but doing nothing will likely feel impossible. This energy can be harnessed and channeled for good if we're intentional about it in our lives. Now, for me personally, I can say I'm already using this energy for my personal relationships and mental and physical health with great results and seeing my relationships and my mental health transform rather quickly. I know someone else who's been using this energy to buy a house and create personal security for themselves. And this has also unfolded nearly overnight. Thank you, Uranus. The changes in my life have been unfolding nearly overnight. Thank you, Uranus. Uranus brings quick change. Mars likes to move hastily when it's uncomfortable. We can use these things for empowerment. In a matter of 2 weeks, this person that bought a house, I know, went from renting to owning, and the house, number one, already had an offer on it. And number two, she wasn't even certain she wanted to buy a house. And still, she figured it out within 2 weeks. I'm uncomfortable with the insecurity I've been facing in my finances up until this point. I want home based security for myself. I want to step into this. And this opposition is happening for her on the axis that deals with home. We can all step into this level of benefit. For me, it's happening on the axis that deals with relationships. You can step into this benefit as well. And I also know someone else who's using this energy to elevate their nonprofit organization and fulfill a major dream. For that person, this energy is taking place in a location in the sky that has to do with manifestation and wish fulfillment. Our personal power in this energy is going to be heightened, it is amplified, it is intensified. Small steps can have massive impact in this energy. In each case that I've just mentioned, we've all had to face a big fear. Thank you, Pluto. In our worthiness, thank you, Chiron. There's Pluto, both talking to the planet of taking action. That's Mars. We've all had to face a big fear in our own worthiness in order to get to the empowerment part. In our action, that's the Mars part, so that we can get past any low self esteem, that's Chiron in Aries, that has held us back from being able to step into utilizing this energy to our advantage. And you can have that same benefit so that you're not being dragged around these energies if you know where this falls in your chart. Now, let's take this a little bit deeper, as if we're not deep enough, because they are both square to Chiron and Aries. We see, let's clean this up so you can see this a little bit better. Here's Pluto, here's Mars, both at the 29th degree of Cancer and Capricorn, very loose, but still impactful, square to Chiron in Aries. Okay. This makes it easy for us at this time to fall in some version of victim mentality. And the reactions we have can become a function of feeling or perceiving disempowerment. But it will be important for us to remember we're never truly powerless. We never have been. Now, we may be afraid of or not like, we may not enjoy the consequences of acting Mars on our power, Pluto, but we're never truly without options. That is an illusion. But the more powerless we feel and believe we are, the more room we leave for someone else or an organization or a group to use our power to their advantage. So it's important to remember that we really do have options as we move through any challenges that may show up at this time. Chiron's influence may have us feeling a bit rejected, maybe even abandoned or let down by other people, especially given his opposition to Juno in Libra here. This constitutes what we call a cardinal grand cross. I'm going to be honest, self-concern, self-involvement, and basically all around everyone having problems of their own to sort out at this time in their lives because their lives are changing too. Yeah, it's going to be really important, so important to assume good intent here, especially with the people you know, love, and care about. So many people are experiencing upheaval and changes on a deeply personal and profound level as we move through this period of time closing out the year. And many of these changes are happening quickly, especially as Mars is in sextile to Uranus. This can have changes happen out of nowhere during this new moon. So it's going to be very important If you want to have health and longevity in your relationships, give people the benefit of the doubt if they are not as quote unquote there for you as they might normally be. This is a time that's calling all of us to really focus on our own situations, keep both of our hands on our own steering wheels, as there is a lot happening for everyone all at the same time. Okay. Now, the trine to Neptune in Pisces is going to be our saving grace. Now, remember, I said Neptune is the captain of Team No Limits. When Neptune is in trine to Mars, let's just clean this up so you can see that a little bit clearer. Here's Neptune in Pisces, here's Mars. They are in a configuration we call a trine. It's 120 degrees. This adds a touch of the altruistic and an ability to act in the interest of the highest and best good of everyone involved. But as I mentioned at the start of this video, this is a stark contrast to the way Mars is in a loose grand cardinal cross with Juno, Pluto, and Chiron. That grand cardinal cross is indicative of self-interest for the purpose of self-preservation. This trine to Neptune for Mars is indicative of taking interest in the greater good of everyone, standing up for others, and protecting the rights and the power of people who may have less or who are being attacked. Want to highlight again, a lot of duality going on here, and we do get to choose which side of ourselves are we going to act on and let lead. Many of us have flown on planes. Some of you listening never have had the opportunity. But for those of you who have had the opportunity, you know that the flight attendant will often say, as part of the takeoff procedures, in case of an emergency, an oxygen mask will drop from the ceiling of the plane, providing oxygen for you if there should be a change in cabin pressure that is sudden. In case of emergency, put your own oxygen mask on first. Choice is in our hands with this particular new moon, and the consequences will, in fact, be long lasting in our individual lives. So, use this energy wisely. If you felt locked out of your higher timeline, like you're going through a major season of correction, changes, and choices, and like you need either some validation for your intuition and your direction of choice or clarification about where to even start or the next step, now's the time to book a reading. You can use the link below or find me at kmoonastro.com to get your reading set up now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the full moon in Taurus coming up on November 15th at 4:28 p.m. Eastern. This is the segment called First Look, where I detail what to expect at the upcoming lunation and how the energy moves from the new moon in Scorpio into the full moon in Taurus so that you can work with the energy intentionally. It's my first look at this chart. Let's see. Here's our full moon in Taurus, 24th degree of Taurus. Oh, how fun. Conjunct Uranus retrograde. All right. Surprise, surprise. I think that's what I'm going to have to call this particular full moon in Taurus, because anytime we have a full moon conjunct Uranus or opposite Uranus or square Uranus, something comes out of nowhere. And here we have Pluto in trine to this full moon opposite Mars. Semi-sextile to Chiron. Yeah, thank God there's nothing else because that's enough. We see a loose sextile to Neptune. Wow. Okay. This is an intense energy, guys. I want to mentally prepare you for it. There is something significant that closes as Pluto wraps up final degrees here in Capricorn, something that has been long held and established in our lives that does come to an end. We see series highlighting, so Pluto represents many things, as I talked about in this video, but whenever Ceres is in concert with a planet that activates a particular side of its energy, that side of its energy becomes heightened. Ceres represents many things as well, but in communication with Pluto, the two of them amplify ending, and they're at that last degree, Pluto in particular, at the anaretic degree of Capricorn, signifying it's like triple closing, triple ending of some sort of structure or tradition or regime or institution that we've known to exist in a very specific way. It does seem to be sudden. It does seem to take us by surprise. We do have Uranus in the location here in Taurus that is indicative of something that's meant to be evolutionary, but is certainly indicative of change as well. Because Mars is in opposition, this does speak to this coming with some sort of power struggle. We certainly see Neptune in the mix at this full moon. These full moons are closures. You would think this was the eclipse on September 17th, but it is literally 60 days out. And as I've told you guys, we will see eclipse energies show themselves up to 90 days out from an eclipse. This is roughly 60 days out from that September 17th lunar eclipse in Pisces. That was a closure eclipse. This particular full moon seems to be some sort of carryover or continuation. So if you missed that particular lunar update, it is available in the playlist. And you'll see the title card says lunar update, or sorry, lunar eclipse in Pisces. I believe it was the Pisces full moon during Virgo season. You can have a listen to that. I detailed what to expect, what kinds of things we might see, but this seems to be some sort of carryover from that, given that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are all speaking to this particular full moon. Um, yeah, this is for all of us privately and collectively some sort of closure and state change to something that we understood to be one way in our lives, now taking new shape, going to be reborn in some new configuration in our lives. If you'd like to understand where this breaks down in your chart and how this breaks down for you personally, definitely book a reading. That's all I'm going to say about it collectively. For those of you who are in Star Club, you already know we've been talking about the election and the collective energies around that. But I won't get into that here. Definitely get on the wait list for Star Club if these are the kind of conversations you would prefer to have. But yeah, this does seem to be some sort of change, is the most neutral word I can use to describe what I'm seeing here. So breathe. We've got this. We can move through it. Remember the questions that I provided for those of you who are already experiencing a lot of this energy moving through your lives now. Show me how this works to my highest good? Show me how I can use this for my highest good. Show me how this works to the highest good of all, universe, God, divine, Allah, whomever you pray to. Be asked for the revelation and be asked for to be shown your part. How can I use this for the greatest good of all? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for liking, subscribing, and sharing. I'm going to hop over now to the live broadcast of the Twin Flame lunar update for this lunation. If you identify as a divine counterpart or in a soulmate or high level love connection, feel free to join me there. We're going to talk about how The new moon in Scorpio plays out for the Divine Counterpart Collective, and I will be in the comments for 1 hour after the live broadcast of these videos answering questions. If you've got any, definitely meet me in the chat over there. If you've got any questions that carry over, I can answer questions there too. Otherwise, I will see you in a one-on-one reading sometime soon. Take great care and bye for now.